Meanwhile, lawmakers across the aisle are warning the president to be cautious with this meeting. We want to bring in House Budget Committee member Congressman Bill Johnson of Ohio. Congressman, good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Maria. Good to be with you.
You are also the former director of Air Force Information Staff, the officer staff at the U.S. Special Ops Command. What do you make of all of this? Do you believe Kim Jong-un?
Well, I don't know that we can necessarily believe him. I think what the president should do is what Ronald Reagan did, trust but verify. But I think this is potentially a breakthrough with tremendous potential benefits. But we do have to be cautious, absolutely have to be cautious.
What does that mean, being cautious? I mean, we know that Kim Jong-un, for the longest time, has said they will never denuclearize.
Well, saying something and then doing something are two different things. If you recall, it was Ronald Reagan that was criticized for telling Gorbachev to tear down the wall. He would call the Soviet Union the evil empire in 1 minute, and then the next he would have the Soviet leader out at the ranch. So there's a human element to these negotiations, and I think the president is taking a big risk, but there is tremendous reward here in stopping and potentially thwarting a nuclear exchange that could kill hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. I think it's a risk worth taking to find out if a breakthrough can be achieved.
This is huge.
Congressman, it's Dagan McDowell. It's not just the threats of military action, but also the sanctions that have really hammered trade between North Korea and China, for example. Do you think that we need to put the hammer down on sanctions, not only keep the pressure on, but again, be even more aggressive leading up to this meeting?
Oh, that's absolutely essential. That's part of the trust but verify formula. We cannot back down at this point, and I would urge the president not to back down until we see some real action, and not just words, but action. You got to remember that the North Korean leader is the same man that killed his uncle and his half-brother, had them murdered to solidify his rule in North Korea. He's also given chemical weapons to Assad in Syria. So there are many reasons why we need to go into this very cautiously, and I don't think the president should pull back on any of the sanctions and the hard line until the North Korean leader shows with his action that he's serious.
Wow. Meanwhile, President Trump is stepping up his fight to end unfair trade policies by signing off on the steel and aluminum tariffs. Let's talk about that. I want to switch gears here, Congressman, which they will go into effect now in 15 days. The only countries that could be exempt from these tariffs are Canada and Mexico. And now China is lashing out with a call for measures against imports of U.S. coal. Your thoughts on what is taking place here?
Well, I've read the actual documents, and while Mexico and Canada are mentioned, it actually opens the door to flexibility to any of our friends and allies with whom we have a secure relationship with to come to the table and ask for an exception or a waiver of these tariff policies. Look, we need to protect domestic production of these critical resources like steel and aluminum. Yeah. But we've got to balance the economics of it. I've been to the White House. I sat with the president when he met with members of the Senate and the House, and I know the president understands this critical balance. We have some tremendously large projects with foreign investment that are going to need that flexibility, and I'm pleased that the president is listening to my concerns and those of my colleagues in the implementation of these tariff policies.
So you think the president understands that, because we know that he's facing incredible amounts of pushback this week from globalists and corporate CEOs to the Wall Street Journal op-ed page saying that tariffs are bad. I happen to think this is about NAFTA and just getting a better for NAFTA, but it's also at the same time defending these two industries, steel and aluminum. And he had those workers, steel and aluminum workers across the country said that the tariffs will revive their industries. Here's what they said yesterday at the White House.
By these tariffs going into place, this gives us ability to come back to 100% capacity.
My father, during the 80s, He lost his job due to imports coming into this country. And I just want to tell you what that does to a man with 6 kids is devastating. So I never forgot that, looking into his eyes in my household, what that does to a family.
So, Congressman, your thoughts here, because we know that while the steel and aluminum people are happy, the companies that are actually inputting the steel and aluminum that may see their prices go up are not as happy.
Well, I've heard it from the president's mouth directly that he understands this balance. I've heard him say that we need to protect the domestic production of these materials, but we've also got to consider the economics of those that are consumers of those products in a global market. So I'm pleased that the president is adding some flexibility. I think the devil is in the details, Maria, and I think it remains to be seen how these tariff policies are going to be implemented. I'm certainly going to be monitoring it very closely. But right now, I think I'm pleased that there's an open door to flexibility for those countries with whom we have a secure relationship and for those projects that are going to create jobs here in America.
Dagan, what do you think? The congressman's pleased. How do you feel? You've been a critic of this.
Now we have to wait and see how it plays out economically and how many jobs are put at risk, how many jobs are lost at all these steel-consuming industries. But we should also point out this is a handout to unions. This is a handout to unions that tend to be run by Democrats. So, again, it puts more money in the hands of potentially Democratic candidates. I don't really know how that shakes out. But this is an industry that employs, the steel industry employs 140,000 people. 6.5 million people are employed at steel-consuming industries in this country. So for every man and woman who's happy about this, there's going to be multiple people who are unhappy.
Yeah, and just real quick, China said they're going to retaliate against our agricultural imports. So it's not just the steel industry, it's not just the aluminum industry, it's also our agricultural industry that actually China is going to retaliate on.
And this will impact jobs in automotive and aerospace. But to your point, Maria, I really think this could be part of his negotiation tactics, and to the congressman's point as well, that this could be part of the flexibility. So I think we have to wait and see what happens.
Yeah, by the close yesterday, the market seemed to feel that way, too, with the nuance of saying Canada and Mexico could be left out of this. Congressman, final word from you.
Well, I think I certainly agree with everything that was said, with one exception. I don't think that this was a handout to the unions. I can tell you, I represent a district along the Ohio River of thousands of people that were dependent upon the steel and the aluminum industry for their jobs, and those aren't just union jobs. They are part of the economy of Appalachia. And so there are people that are happy about this today, but I agree that we've got to see the implementation, and the flexibility has to be there to balance the economics with domestic production.
All right, a lot of flexibility in those nuance that he signed yesterday. Congressman, good to see you, sir. Thank you.